Hello again. In this video we're going to talk about variables and strings in Python. So to get started, I'm going to create a new file again to write my program in. And I'm going to go ahead and give this a name. So I created a folder on my desktop last time for all my files called Python files. I'm going to call this file vars, or V-A-R-S, short for variables.py. Again, this part at the beginning where mine says vars can be any name you want. But usually it's best to give it some name that makes sense. Since we're talking about variables in this video, that seems like a good name to me. Just make sure it ends with .py though. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and now I've got a program to work with. First thing I want to do is look at a variable again. Last time we used a variable in our program, but we kind of didn't go into the details too much. So let's do that now. I'm going to give my variable name a, and I'm going to assign it the value 3. And then I'm going to use the print command to print out a. So I want you to think for a minute, make a prediction about what will happen when I run this program. Remember, I can hit F5 to go ahead and save and run the program. In this case, it prints out the value 3. If you're paying attention to the last video, you might have expected this to happen. I make a variable, I give it a name, in this case a, and I assign it the value 3. And then I print out the value stored in a. Alright, now let's look at adding another variable to our program. I'll just go ahead and call it b. And I'm going to give this the value something like 4.2. Now, I want you to think what might happen. I'm going to type print a, comma, b. Make a prediction about what might happen. Alright, so to run the program, it prints out 3, and then a space, and then 4.2. So in the print command, we can print out multiple values. And we'll be using the print command a lot in our programs, since using graphics is a more advanced topic. Alright, so now I'm going to type print a plus b. Make a prediction about what might happen. Run it. 7.2. So it takes the value 3 plus the value 4.2, computes that sum, and prints it out to the shell. Alright, one more trick, or one more example. I'm going to make another variable, c equals 16. And now I'm going to say a equals c, print a. Make a prediction about what might happen. I'm going to run it. It prints out the value 16. So here's one of the first differences you're going to see between programming and math class. So in math class, when you see the equal sign, what that means is that you're claiming the value on the left-hand side of the equal sign is the same as the value on the right-hand side. In almost all programming languages, however, the equal sign is what's called the assignment operator. So what the assignment operator does is assign the value on the right-hand side. So in the first line, let's look at that. It assigns the value on the right-hand side of the equal sign, in this case 3, to the variable usually on the left-hand side, in this case a. So what's going on, the equal sign means assign the value 3 to the variable a. In the next line, what's going on is it says assign the value 4.2 to the variable b. Here it says assign the value 16 to the variable c. In this line, we're not saying that a and c are always equal, because clearly they're not. 3 does not equal 16. However, what we are saying is assign the value stored in c to the variable a. So here's c. Let's look. The value stored in that is 16. Alright, take 16, assign it to a. 3 is now gone. So when I run this program, 16 is the result that comes out. Go ahead and stop and play with this for a few minutes if you're still confused at all, and make sure you get a good understanding that the equal sign in programming means the assignment operator. It does not mean equality like it does in math class. Alright, now let's look at strings. So the world is more than just numbers, of course. Sometimes we also want to store words in our programs. So I'm going to go ahead and make a variable called words, and I'm going to put the sentence programming is fun in my sentence. Now I'm going to go ahead and print words. Make a prediction about what's going to happen. Alright, so it printed out the sentence, programming is fun. Hopefully this isn't a surprise to you, but I do have one question. What if I want it to print out, how does Python know the difference between variables and text that I want printed out, or stored as data in this case? So how it knows the difference is these quotation marks here. I'm going to make another variable, words2. You can also use double quotes. You see the difference here? Here's a double quote, here's a single quote. So you can also use double quotes. So is math. Okay, so now we've got double quotes instead of single quotes. These both work, but what they do is tell Python that these are what's between the two quotation marks here is data. It's not commands that should be executed by the language, okay? So if I delete the quotes, what do you think might happen? I'm going to go ahead and hit run module, and there's an error, okay? And that's because since there's no quotes, it's trying to execute these words here as commands, but these don't make any sense. If I made a variable called programming, then this part might make sense, but this stuff still won't. So in order to represent that I want this information stored as data and it's not commands, I'm going to put the quotes around it. And here I can actually show you, I could put words here. So now words doesn't mean this variable here, it's just data that I want to have stored. Alright? So now I've got two variables with strings. These are called strings. They have text stored in strings, okay? This is called an integer because it's just a number, a whole number. And this is called a floating point number, and we'll talk more about those in the future. Basically, any number that has a decimal in it that isn't a whole number, like 3 or 16, is a floating point number, and numbers that are whole numbers, like 3 or 16, or even negative 16, are integers. So, what do you think happens when we add two strings together? So make a prediction. What happens? Words plus words2. These are both variables, right? Words and words2. Go ahead and make a prediction about what's going to happen. I'm going to actually make it even more challenging, and I'm going to add another string, words. So make a prediction here. What happens when I add together the strings stored in words, words2, and the string words itself? Alright, I'm going to go ahead and run the program. What's printed out? Programming is fun. This is the value stored in words. Okay, programming is fun. And then words, which is the string stored in the variable words2. And then last, this string here is added. So when it comes to strings, the plus sign means combine them. And you notice there's no spaces in between. So if I wanted to have a space, I'd either have to add a space to the end here or one to the end here. And that would put a space here. So if you see, if I run it again, there's going to be a space right here. And then same thing, I could add another space to the end of this string or the beginning of this string in order to get a space between these two words here. So I can do that like so. And we'll see. Separate it out. Alright, programming is fun. Words. Alright, now I have another question. What does it mean to add a number to a string? Do you think that might work? So what if I type words plus a? I'm going to go ahead and just think if this makes sense. And if not, like, what might we have to do to make it make sense? So it doesn't work. What it's saying is can't convert int to str or string. So the solution to this problem is to use a string command. Remember, a is a number, right? A has the value 3 stored in it. So I'm going to do is type str and then a in closed parentheses. So the open and closed parentheses are just like in math class. I put a value in here and this command does something to that value. So the open and closed parentheses tell it where to start and stop, and then the value that I want changed is inside. So I've got 3 or a inside of the string command, and it's going to convert 3, the number, into a string. So I'm going to run the program, we'll see what happens. Programming is fun 3. What I could also do, if I didn't have a variable here, I could just put 3 in quotes, and that would make it a string instead of a number. So if I run, you'll see it works. However, if I remove the quotes, we're back to the original problem where I'm trying to add a string to a number, and that doesn't necessarily make sense. Okay? Same error again. Alright, so now let's make our program do something a little bit interesting. Remember baby steps. We have to walk before we have to crawl before we can walk, and we're learning a little bit at a time. So what I'm going to do is have a program that asks the user for their age. So I'm going to make a variable age, and I'm going to use the input command, which you may remember from the first program we wrote. So I'm going to type input, and I'm going to say, what is your age? Question mark, and then I'm just going to put a space in the string and the function. Alright, and now I'm going to say result equals in 1 year you will be space in the string, and I'm going to add age plus 1. Okay? Now I'm going to print the result. So, hopefully you understand kind of what's going to be happening here. I will warn you that there's a problem with this program. It won't work yet, and I want us to think about why that is the case. So, input is a command or a function which takes this string in here and prompts the user with it. So it asks them, what is your age, in the shell, and then when the user enters something and presses enter, it takes that value and stores it in the variable here on the left. However, the input function always returns a string, so the value stored in age will always be a string. So what did we just learn happens when I try to add age, which will be a string. Now, even if the user enters a number, it will still be a string. It'll be, so if they enter 15, it will be stored like this, okay? Not like this without the quotes. So what's going to happen when they have a string, age, and try to add a number to it? Well, let's check. Run module. Alright, so what is your age? Some of you in the class might be 15, for instance. So I'll go ahead and enter that, and we get an error. Can't convert int to string. So that's what's happening here. So go ahead and brainstorm what might be a way to fix this program. Alright, so the best way to fix this program is to convert age into an int. So it's a bit of a trick question. I didn't really show you how to do this yet. So, age is a string, and it has a number in it. So it makes sense to be able to convert it to an int, or an integer. Let's go ahead and look in the shell. Remember that we can just type commands in the shell and they'll be executed instantly. We don't have to make our own program for this. So let's just go ahead and look at what happens when I type int, and then a number in quotes, like 13 for instance. It gives me 13 without quotes. Just like if I type string, str, and then put 13 without the quotes, it'll give me back 13 with the quotes. So this is text data, this is numerical data. Make sure you understand the difference. So we're converting from one type of data, in this case a string, into an integer. And in this case we're converting from an integer into a string. So remember, when we want to add things together, it doesn't make sense to do 13 plus 13, right? But it does make sense to do 13 plus int 13, right? And this should give us 26, of course. So up here, what's going to happen is I'm going to convert the string stored in age into an integer, and then I'm going to add 1 to it. But are we done yet? This is still going to be a number overall, right? So if the user entered 15, for instance, that'll get converted to a number, which is good, and we'll add 1 to it, which is also fine, and we'll get 16 here. But this overall will still be a number. So let's run it and see what happens. When I enter 15, I still get an error because this is fine. I get 16 here, but I still am trying to add 16, the number, to the string. So the last step here is to convert this whole result here into a string. All right? And now our program should work just fine. What is your age? 15. In 1 year, you will be 16. Alright, so one last thing that's kind of unique to Python and doesn't work so well in other languages, and it's one of the reasons that Python's a bit easier to learn. I can have a variable like age, and I can store a number in it. And then on the next line, if I want to, I can then store a string in it. Alright? And in this case I get 15. So I can change the type of data being stored in a variable, but I still can't. And remember, age, this doesn't exist after I've assigned this value to this value. So I still cannot do something like this because this is a string now. It has 15, the word, not the number, stored in it. So it doesn't make sense to add 1. But if I put quotes here, okay, it's going to tell me 15 and then the number 1 because this is a string. So it doesn't make sense. It's not going to know to store 16, right? Maybe we would have to write a different program to do that. Thanks for your attention. I'll see you in the next video.